Alright, Shalom. Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakwadash. Brother Barak. Yeah, I see it, I see it, I see it, I see it. First John 5 and 3? Yeah, and a lot of these Israelites, right? These two-thirds, they're looking for excuses to not, keep the commandments of the Lord. They're looking for excuses to, eat abominable foods and basically, just be, lazy sluggards. Not read the scriptures. Ultimately, that, going back to what you were saying, one of the main things a lot of these Israelites will say is, oh, the Bible was you know, written by man, or or the Bible is, this man's book. But ultimately, the Lord, He uses, the Lord has an order to things. He uses, certain men, certain prophets to, basically as, like a middleman, basically to, the Lord, He's the ultimate author, of this book, but He uses His mouthpieces, right? His prophets are His mouthpieces, right? And I put in the chat just two examples. Right? There's many examples, of course, but the Lord basically telling His prophets, write these things down. Yeah, the like, for instance, in the book of Ezekiel, right, where he tells, basically, he's talking about the 12 tribes, or the stick, right, or the book of Exodus, where the Lord tells Moses, to write the commandments, right. There's many examples of basically the Lord, He's using His prophets as, mouthpieces, right? Y- but these people, they want to find basically every excuse, and these are really just, these are just a lot of these people that are saying these things. They're pretty much past the point of no return. They're so ignorant, and what were you saying, brother Selah? There are a lot of these people. They'll read every other book, that was written by man. When it comes to the scriptures, that's when they'll basically bring that argument out. And I got something. Yeah, this is the book of Isaiah, chapter 39. It says that this is a rebellious people, lying children and children that will not hear the law of the Lord, right? Ultimately, that goes back to what you were saying earlier. These people, they want to say, the Bible's written by a white man, or the Bible's written by man, or whatever the fuck they have to say, right? Which we know obviously that wasn't true, first of all. But second of all, these people, they ultimately they have so many demons on them. They're rebellious. It's like you speak to them, it's like you're speaking to a brick wall. They just don't want to hear the law of the Lord. They don't want to hear the word of the Lord. They want to continue to follow on different idols. Spiritually be adulterous and physically, but spiritually, what spirit committing spiritual adultery, like worshiping JC, right? Yeah, Slovakia. No, I was gonna say no, I had one precept after you, but I wanted to say that you kind of bring this one out. Yeah, this is the book of Romans chapter 3 verse 3. It says, "For what if some did not believe? Shall their unbelief make the faith of Yahweh without effect? Yahweh forbid. Yeah, let Yahweh be true, but every man a liar, as it is written, that thou mightest be justified in thy sayings, and mightest overcome when thou art judged." Right? So, if these people they don't believe, ultimately, it's on you at that point. The blood was off our hands. We told you, we warned you, with whatever rebuttals you have, or whatever scoffing remarks, or you're just whatever you want to say, or whatever remarks you have, you know, it's not going to stop the Lord from continuing on with His prophecies. It's not going to stop what we say. The Scripture, you know, from being true, right? Like what you brought out earlier. These Scriptures, or they're sharper than any two-edged sword, right? And they're basically, these scriptures, they're alive and active, right? So it doesn't matter what you people say, or what you have, you have, a doubt or unbelief, or you want to scoff at what we say. These things are still gonna, they're still gonna turn true. Yeah, you have even regular people in the world saying, people that don't even believe in these scriptures, they're they're saying, they feel like time is speeding up, which it is. Ultimately, it is. And uh, can I bring another point out, Ak? Yeah, yeah, go ahead. You got it. You got it. You got it. Yeah, no, I got some because the list that you put, right? If I can go back and just to add on, there's another thing that people they like to make, another thing that people like to say. They say, you've been saying these things for thousands of years. What makes you think that they're gonna happen now, right? But what does the scripture say, right? I have the book of Romans 15:4. It says, "For whatsoever things were written aforetime were written for our learning, that we through patience and comfort of the scriptures might have hope." Right? So yeah, these things were written thousands of years ago. Yet they were supposed to be meant for a different period of time. That's just another thing people like to mention. A lot of these scoffing ass Jakes, especially Eve. But Eve, I see typically Eve, she's always bringing out this. You've been saying this for thousands of years, right? They always like to, and that goes, yeah, like the spirit, because that goes back to Habakkuk 2 and 3 as well. You can bring that out. Yep, yep. And yeah, and you see it, Terry's, you see small, you see different delays and things. You people saying this is gonna happen, it doesn't happen, but all of these things were a part of prophecy. You know what I'm saying? Although it tarry, wait for it because it will surely come. It will not tarry, right? Because of that, there's gonna be there's a point where that gradualism will turn into suddenism. Yeah, prophesying the downfall of certain kingdoms, certain kings. Just all these. How would they know exactly these things? Because it's from the Lord. Destroyed by fire. Yeah. These people are gonna be fucking destroyed. They're gonna be like, yeah, that nuclear fire is gonna basically melt their fucking faces off. And also, these these same people, right? How do I say it? They're gonna be like a literal like almost like a woman. They're gonna have their hands on their stomach. Like these these men are gonna act like they're gonna have their hands on their stomach because they're gonna be in so much pain. Similar to as of a woman giving birth. And this also reminds me like of Wisdom of Solomon 5:5, I think. Of Solomon 5:5. Let's see. Yeah, it says no, what was it 5:2? Yeah, it says, when they see it, they shall be troubled with terrible fear, and shall be amazed at the strangeness of his salvation, so far beyond all they look for. Right? And that's also going back to, these prophets. They're saying the same, similar things. Right? They're seeing the same visions and things. Ultimately, these people, they're going to be amazed that, the elect are going to get beamed up in those chariots. Lord willing, we're part of that number, and they're going to see, these nuclear missiles rain down upon them, right? You're going to see the elect get beamed up in those chariots, those, so-called UFOs, and they're going to see these nuclear missiles basically, destroy them. Right, but you got it, Ak. Yep. And and it's great. It's amazing, Ak, because basically, the scriptures that you just read, all these different prophets, they were saying very similar things, like, Esdras, right, Habakkuk. They were basically, speaking about the destruction of, Babylon, destruction of the wicked, right? And like, for example, like, all these scriptures, they all these men, they're on the same accord. That's how these scriptures are true, right? And even let me see, Isaiah, is speaking about this verse, their children shall be dashed to pieces, right? The same thing was being spoken about in the book of Second Esdras, right? All these books, right? You'll see, the prophets, they were always, on one accord, right? Seeing the same vision. Yep. Jeroboam, Rehoboam. Yeah. 1 second. Yeah. I'm gonna have to go back and look at that one, but you basically, how do we say, we that during the time of King Solomon's rulership, during Jeroboam and Rehoboam, that's ultimately when the kingdom of Israel they started, basically, how do you say it? That was ultimately, when you started to see the downfall of Israel. Yeah, yeah, and it's spoken about in the book of Zephaniah how that basically those two olive branches, right, which represent or which represents the northern and southern kingdom, they're ultimately going to come together, right? Where when you see the scripture speak about Judah and Israel, that's what they're speaking about, the northern and southern kingdom. That was prophesied. We basically we wouldn't remember our. I have a scripture on that actually. Um, I have it on a video actually, but that was basically prophesied. And that we wouldn't because there's a lot of people they basically how do I say it? Yeah, ultimately what I'm trying to say is if it wasn't for this truth, right? We wouldn't know we were Israelites because that was part of the curses. Ultimately for us to forget our heritage. We don't we didn't know exactly where we came from. But but now you're seeing Israelites that they're waking up. Finally seeing it. Ultimately if it wasn't for these scriptures, right? We wouldn't know we were Israelites. and Salakia, like I found that precept. Yeah, yeah, and ultimately, how we know about our heritage is just through these scriptures, right? Because the Spirit beareth witness. That's ultimately how we know we are the Israelites, right? Because if it wasn't for this truth, we wouldn't know what the fuck we are. You know, we would have just been going off, you know, listening to what Esau, you know, the names that Esau basically gave us, right? Yeah, he'll he'll call you, you know, black, Puerto Rican, you Jamaican, you Haitian, you Native American, right? And that ultimately goes back to the scripture. You know, but Saki, I want to just bring that out. It's just showing our point even further. You know, all these things, you know, spoken about, right? You know, thousands of years ago, you know, you're seeing them, you know, basically take place, you know, in this time period. But Salakia, continue. You got it. Yep. Yeah. Ancient Babylon. And 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 ancient Babylon wasn't destroyed by fire, right? You know, so it has to be speaking about, you know, America, Babylon the Great, or for a future time period. Yeah, yeah, you can hate us, but we're just gonna be continuing to bring out what what these scriptures say, the same way, Jeremiah, he was speaking about, the what you were saying before, he was speaking about, the downfall of Judah, right? He was prophesying on the downfall of Judah, and the prophets, they were all prophesying, against, basically, um, destruction, right? They weren't telling you, sweet things, right? So ultimately, and all these things, right? These you see, like we spoke about, they're all these prophets are all on the same accord, right? That's how these this is the truth, bro. Because and you just see these things, right? Like you were saying earlier, these prophets were alive during hundreds of years apart, completely different time periods. Yet they're still saying the same thing, right? And now the prophets are back now, today, right? And so you people, you can come up with these different types of your remarks. Yeah, at the end of the day, some people are gonna get it, and there's some people they're just not gonna be able to get it. At that point, you're destined for destruction. Right. You have Romans 11:7. All right. Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rakakodesh. Brother Barak. Shalom.